He wasn't just a ranger in the wild or the sword-wielding heir to Gondor's throne. Aragorn lived a life that legends envy, raised in secret, hunted by shadows, torn between love and duty, and crowned in the ashes of war. But behind the crown and blade lies a journey more epic than any song the bards ever sang. What if I told you the future king was once a hunted orphan, and that the fate of Middle-earth depended not on strength, but on a choice he made in silence? By the way, before we dive in, I'm curious, where are you watching this from? And what time is it there right now? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far the Fellowship of Middle-earth really stretches. The story of Aragorn begins not with triumph, but with loss. Long before the Fellowship, before the battles of Helm's Deep or the crowning in Gondor, there was a broken kingdom in the north, and a child born into danger. Arathorn II, chieftain of the Dunedain and heir to Isildur's fading bloodline, lived in a world of constant threat. The kingdom of Arnor had long since crumbled, split and shattered by war and time. Its people, rangers and nomads, roamed the wilderness, hunted by orcs and shadowed by the ever-growing darkness in the east. But even in the ruins of a once great realm, hope endured. Arathorn II married Gilraen, a woman of strength and quiet wisdom. And from that union, in the year 2931 of the Third Age, a son was born, Aragorn, the last of the line of kings. The boy who carried the weight of ages in his veins. Yet he would barely know his father. When Aragorn was just 2 years old, Arathorn led a band of rangers to hunt orcs in the wilds of Eriador. It was a mission born of duty, and it would be his last. Stray orc arrow pierced his eye, and the chieftain fell, leaving his young son fatherless and his wife a grieving widow. Gilraen, fearing for her child's safety, took him to the only place where the shadows could not yet reach, Rivendell. There, in the hidden valley of the elves, Elrond received the boy. But he knew the danger. If Sauron learned that the Isildur's line still lived, the child would be hunted without mercy. So Aragorn's name was concealed. He would be known only as Estel, which in Elvish means hope. Hope, born in the ashes of war. And so, under starlight and silence, the king was raised in secret. No throne, no crown, only the legacy of a broken sword and the burden of a destiny that had waited over 3,000 years. The world would forget his name. But it was in that forgetting that Aragorn's legend began. He would rise not through prophecy, but through quiet suffering. The last flame of Numenor, flickering in the dark. In the halls of Rivendell, hidden behind waterfalls and ancient trees, Aragorn lived a life unlike any child of men. He knew nothing of swords, crowns, or the burden that would one day break him, or make him. To him, Elrond was not a lord, but a father. The elves, not guardians of an ancient world, but kind voices that echoed like song in the twilight. The forests were his playground, the stars his companions, and his name was Estel, Hope. Gilraen, his mother, watched him with silent sorrow. She loved him dearly, but the weight of what he must become haunted her eyes. Though she never told him the truth, she knew her time with him as a child was fleeting. Elrond had warned her. His path will be hard. If he survives it, he will be alone more often than not. So she let him run barefoot through gardens of light. Let him laugh among the elves, knowing each laugh was borrowed from fate. But Estel was no ordinary boy. He was keen of mind, swift of foot, and quiet in spirit. The elves noted something ancient in his gaze, as though the wisdom of many lives had settled in his bones. He listened more than he spoke, and often wandered the libraries of Rivendell, lost among stories of heroes, wars, and kingdoms long fallen to dust. There was one story he always returned to, the tale of Isildur, the man who cut the ring from Sauron's hand, and then failed to destroy it. Estel did not know that Isildur's blood ran through his veins, but something in the tale stirred him, both awe and unease. By his 10th year, the whispers among the elves grew. He learns too quickly, they said. He has the heart of a king. Elrond watched quietly, holding back the truth like a dam before a flood. Estel, unaware, lived on with curiosity in his soul and quiet fire in his heart. But even in the safe halls of Rivendell, the world outside was changing. Dark shapes moved in distant woods. Whispers of Sauron's return began to spread. and the shadow that had once claimed his father would soon be reaching for the sun. The days of innocence were numbered. Soon Estelle would have to meet Aragorn. By the time Estelle reached his 20th year, he had grown into a man of quiet strength and restless soul. His eyes, gray like storm-washed skies, held questions he could no longer ignore. Elrond saw it, Gilraen felt it. The time had come to unveil the truth. One evening, Elrond summoned him to a high chamber lit only by candlelight and memory. No gods, no ceremony. Just the elf lord and the young man he had raised like a son. What followed would shatter the world Estelle thought he knew. Elrond spoke gently, but his words fell like thunder. "You are Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir to Isildur, the last of the Dúnedain, the true king of Gondor and Anor." The silence that followed was vast. Estelle, Aragorn, could barely breathe. A king? Him? The blood of Isildur coursed through his veins. The same Isildur who failed to destroy the ring. Then came more. Elrond handed him the Ring of Barahir, a relic of ancient Númenor once worn by kings. Then the shards of Narsil, the broken sword that had cut the ring from Sauron's hand. The blade was shattered, just like the kingdom it once ruled. With shaking hands, Aragorn took the hilt. Cold, heavy, and full of unspoken promises. "You have not come to the end of your journey," Elrond said. "You have only just begun." The weight of destiny crashed down upon him. When he left that chamber, he was not the same man. Estelle was gone. Aragorn had awakened. But not everyone welcomed this change. Gilraen, his mother, watched him with both pride and pain. She had raised him for this moment, yet now that it had come, her heart trembled. "He is too young," she whispered, "too unready. He has no idea what it means to carry the hopes of the free peoples." But Elrond knew time was running short. Darkness was rising. The world needed more than hidden kings and forgotten swords. They needed hope, not in name, but in action. So Aragorn made a choice. He would leave Rivendell, abandon comfort, embrace exile. He would walk the wild paths of Middle-earth, not as a ruler, but as a servant. Not to claim a crown, but to prove he deserved one. The world beyond Rivendell was vast, untamed, broken, and whispering with danger. But before Aragorn took his first step into exile, fate placed one more obstacle before him. One far more complicated than orcs, blades, or shadows. Her name was Arwen. She had returned from Lothlorien not long before. Daughter of Elrond, granddaughter of Galadriel, the even star of her people. Immortal, radiant, untouched by time or sorrow. They met beneath the golden trees of Rivendell as the sun filtered through ancient branches. Aragorn, no longer Estelle, now stood in his full height, young, uncertain, with a fire in his spirit. And Arwen, she saw it. At first she looked upon him as one might a curious flame, something wild and fleeting. But the more they spoke, the more that flame grew. He spoke to her, not as a subject to royalty, but as a man who knew how fragile life truly was. Every glance he gave her carried the weight of time he didn't have. Arwen, centuries older, saw something rare in him, mortality wrapped in courage. And slowly, against both tradition and reason, she began to care. They walked together through Rivendell's quiet groves, speaking of stars, old songs, and what lies beyond the sea. But love, in Middle-earth, never comes without price. When Elrond learned of their growing bond, his heart grew heavy. "She is of the Elder. You are of the race of men," he said to Aragorn. "Her fate is bound to the undying lands. Yours, to death." Aragorn said nothing. But deep within, a war had begun. How could he ask her to forsake eternity for a mortal life of hardship and war? How could he not, when every step away from her felt like tearing from his own soul? He made no promises to Arwen, not yet. But the seed was planted, and it would bloom over many long years, in hope, in sorrow, and in waiting. Then at last, Aragorn turned from the valley that raised him. With only a sword hilt, a heavy heart, and a future carved in shadow, he left Rivendell behind. And so began the long road of the Ranger, not as a prince, not as a hero, but as a man already at war with the world, with his bloodline, and with his heart. The world did not welcome Aragorn. Beyond the safety of Rivendell, Middle-earth was cracking under the weight of growing darkness. The whispers of Sauron's return had become quiet certainties. Shadows gathered in Mirkwood. Orcs bred in numbers unseen since the days of Mordor's fall. The Free Peoples were scattered, weary, and leaderless. Aragorn, now 20, walked into this chaos with no army, no followers. Only a broken lineage and a silent vow. He would not claim the throne by blood. He would earn it in exile. Disguised beneath cloak and hood, he took no titles. He became a wanderer, a huntsman, a ghost in the wild. To most, he was simply a man named Strider, worn, grim, and watchful. Few knew that the man sleeping in mud beneath the trees was the rightful king of Gondor. But that was how he wanted it. He traveled far, across the windswept plains of Rohan, through the tangled woods of Mirkwood, down into the sun-scorched lands of Harad. In every corner of Middle-earth, Aragorn left a footprint, sometimes as a guide, sometimes as a soldier, always as a shadow. He learned the tongues of many lands, the customs of kings and peasants alike. He hunted beasts that should have been legends. He defended villages that would never know his name. And in every quiet act, in every battle survived, he carved away the uncertainty within him. This was no prince on a quest. This was a man forging himself in fire. Yet he was never truly alone. The Dunedain, the Rangers of the North, men of his own bloodline, still roamed the wild. They watched, waited, and guarded the land in secret. Slowly, quietly, Aragorn became their leader, not by declaration, but by action. Even in obscurity, his legend began to form. Children in Bree whispered about the tall man with the sharp eyes. Orcs learned to fear the ranger with the silent step. In the corners of taverns, his name passed in low voices: Strider, the man who always walked alone but never fell. But Aragorn did not seek glory. He was chasing something deeper. He was chasing worth. Because only by walking the long, brutal road of the forgotten could he ever hope to be the king the world had lost. Though Aragorn wandered far, the memory of Arwen Undomiel never left him. In the wild, where silence stretched endlessly and shadows hunted the unwary, her face returned to him like a dream he couldn't wake from. He thought often of her smile beneath Rivendell's starlit canopy, of the way her gaze steadied his soul. But love, for Aragorn, was not simple. It was a burden. One more impossible choice stacked upon the ones already haunting his bloodline. Unknown to him, Arwen too carried the weight of their bond. Elrond saw it in her silence, in the way she no longer smiled freely, in how she began to drift through Rivendell like a figure from another age, caught between immortality and the love of a mortal man. Her heart had been claimed, and with that came a terrible price. Elrond did not oppose Aragorn out of pride or prejudice. He feared for his daughter. He had seen the decay of mortal kingdoms, the fall of men, and the brief flicker of human life. To him, Aragorn was good and noble, yes, but doomed to die. There is sorrow enough in this world, Elrond told her. Do not add to it by choosing grief. But Arwen's heart was already decided. She returned to Lothlorien, where time moved slower, to reflect under the golden malin trees. There she spoke with her grandmother Galadriel, who saw into the heart of all things. It was in that sacred place that Arwen finally made her decision. She would give up the immortal life of the Eldar. She would not sail west to the Undying Lands. She would stay. For Aragorn. Her choice was quiet, resolute, and irreversible. It was not a decision of impulse or fantasy, but of understanding. She knew she would know loss, that she would watch him age and die, that one day she would walk alone, and still, she chose love. A love that spanned races, pages, and the bitter line between death and eternity. While Aragorn wandered, testing his body and spirit in war, Arwen had already passed her greatest trial. She had given up forever for a single lifetime beside him. Aragorn wandered for decades. He did not return to Rivendell. He could not. The memory of Arwen and the weight of his destiny made staying unbearable. And so, he threw himself deeper into the wilderness, into the forgotten edges of the world, where kings were myths, and duty had no witnesses. But Aragorn was not running. He was preparing. Under various names and disguises, he served kings and lords without revealing his identity. In Rohan, he rode under King Thengel, Theoden's father, fighting off the landing raids, and proving himself a warrior of unmatched resolve. They knew him only as Thorongil, Eagle of the Star, a name that hinted at nobility, but revealed nothing. Years later, he served in Gondor, beneath Steward Ictilion, the father of Denethor. He wore no crown, but his command was respected like one. He advised in council, rode at the head of armies, and even led a daring assault against the corsairs of Umbar, setting their fleet ablaze. The people cheered his victory, then watched him vanish into the night. He did not stay for glory. He never did. Denethor, proud and suspicious, grew uneasy with this stranger, who seemed to know too much and commanded too well. And Aragorn, sensing danger, slipped back into the wild. But his legend lingered. In both Rohan and Gondor, songs were whispered of a captain with grey eyes and a forgotten name. One who came in silence and left only victory behind. But while men spoke of Thorongil in hushed admiration, Aragorn found no rest. His travels carried him to the far south, into Harad, where stars were strange and enemies unending. He fought, bled, and watched the cruelty of Sauron's long arms stretch even into those distant lands. He began to understand the world, not just through the lens of power, but through its pain. He saw what war did to the weak, what fear did to the good, and why kingship, if ever it came to him, must be more than a title. It must be a service. He returned to the north, older, leaner, hardened not just by sword, but by sorrow. And in his silence, in the dirt beneath his boots, the king was quietly rising, one step at a time. By the time Aragorn returned to the north, the whispers of Sauron's return were no longer rumors. They were warnings. The shadow had begun to stretch over Middle-earth, and Gandalf the Grey was already searching for answers in the dark. One of those answers had a name, Gollum. The twisted creature who once held the One Ring had vanished, and with him, all certainty vanished too. If Sauron found him first, the world could fall before it even had a chance to fight. So Gandalf turned to the one man he trusted most. He turned to Aragorn, and without question, Aragorn accepted. Thus began a mission that would go unnoticed in the songs of men and the records of kings. But it may have saved all of Middle-earth. For years, Aragorn hunted Gollum, not for glory, not for vengeance, but for knowledge. Every clue was a ghost. Every step led deeper into danger. From the marshes of the Anduin to the jagged peaks near Mordor, he followed the trail of the creature that once called the ring precious. Tracking Gollum was unlike any hunt he had ever known. Gollum was clever, slippery, and desperate. He moved through places no sane man would go, feeding on filth, hiding in shadows, whispering madness into the night. But Aragorn did not stop. He braved places where the air reeked of death, faced beasts that knew no fear of men. He endured loneliness deeper than wilderness itself. And finally, after what felt like an age, he found Gollum. Wretched, pale, half-mad, yet alive. Aragorn captured him near the dead marshes, not far from Mordor's grasp. He bound the creature and brought him north, through dangerous lands, never resting for long, knowing the Eye was searching. He delivered Gollum to the wood elves of Mirkwood, where he would be kept safely for now. What Aragorn didn't realize was that in capturing Gollum, he had unknowingly protected Frodo's path before it had even begun. Had Gollum roamed free, the ring's journey to Mount Doom may have ended before it ever started. There was no crown, no song, no reward for this. Only silence. But Aragorn didn't need songs. He only needed to know he had done his part. The shadows were lengthening across Middle-earth. Gandalf had uncovered the truth. The One Ring had been found, and it was in the hands of a gentle hobbit from the Shire. Frodo Baggins, nephew of the very Bilbo, who had once stumbled upon it in the darkness of Gollum's cave. Now Sauron knew. The ring wraiths were riding. Time was gone, but Gandalf was delayed, and Frodo was walking blind into danger. So once again, the task fell to Aragorn. He rode for the village of Bree, a quiet, unassuming place where few paid attention to the larger currents of the world. He entered the prancing pony, hooded and silent, watching the door. When Frodo finally arrived, it wasn't under cover of secrecy. A clumsy accident caused the ring to slip onto his finger, and in a flash, he vanished. The room froze. Eyes turned. Whispers stirred. And Aragorn knew. The enemy had seen him. That night, in the shadows of a smoky inn, Strider revealed himself, not as a king, not as a hero, but as a man who had been watching Frodo for far longer than the Hobbit realized. "I can protect you," he said, eyes piercing through the dark. "But I cannot guarantee your safety if you refuse to trust me." Frodo hesitated. Who was this grim, weathered man in the corner? Friend, spy, assassin? But Aragorn didn't offer assurances, he offered truth. His voice carried weight, not of command but of exhaustion. He had walked too far, seen too much, and lost too many to waste time with lies. And slowly, trust was born. When the ringwraiths attacked later that night, Aragorn did not run. He fought them off with fire and steel, defending the hobbits with a fury that shocked even himself. These were no longer mere travelers, they were charges, and their survival was now tied to his fate. From Bree, Aragorn would lead them on the hidden paths through the wild. Not just as a guide, but as a guardian. No longer Thorongil, no longer Estel. Now, he was Strider, the ranger with the broken sword and the unbroken will. And with that first step out of Bree, the road to destiny truly began. Leaving Bree, Aragorn had no illusions about the road ahead. The Nine were hunting. The ring was drawing evil like blood draws wolves. And Frodo, whether he knew it or not, carried more than the fate of his kind. He carried the fate of the world. Aragorn led the hobbits eastward, avoiding roads, steering clear of open land, and trusting only the trees and hills he'd wandered for decades. His pace was relentless. His eyes never stopped scanning the horizon. He didn't eat much, he rarely spoke, and when he did, it was only to warn. If the Black Riders find us in the open, we will not survive. Through the Midgewater marshes they slogged, soaked and bitten by endless swarms of insects. Days bled into nights. The hobbits began to question whether this grim man was truly their protector, or just another shadow to be feared. But at Weathertop, their doubts vanished. The group made camp among the crumbling ruins of an old Arnorian watchtower. But the shadows crept closer, and that night, 5 ringwraiths descended in black silence, blades drawn and wailing. Aragorn fought them with torch and sword, flame and fury, holding the line while the others scrambled to protect Frodo, but it wasn't enough. Frodo was stabbed by a mogul blade, a wound not meant to kill but to enslave. The shard began to move toward his heart. Aragorn knew what it meant. If Frodo didn't reach Rivendell soon, he would become a wraith himself, another servant of Sauron. The ranger became desperate. He led them through hills and rivers, across dangerous ground, never sleeping. When Frodo faltered, Aragorn carried him. When the others despaired, he gave them firelight. And just when it seemed too late, salvation came in the form of Arwen. She rode like the wind, faster than any blade could follow. With Frodo in her arms, she summoned the power of the river itself to wash away the Black Riders. Aragorn watched her from the bank, his love, his hope, his reminder of why he fought. And finally, battered, bloodied, and breathless, they arrived at Rivendell. Frodo lived, but Aragorn knew this was only the beginning. The darkness had tasted them, and it would not stop hunting. The halls of Rivendell had not seen such tension in many ages. Elves, dwarves, men, and hobbits sat beneath the ancient arches of Elrond's house, gathered not in celebration, but in crisis. The One Ring had been revealed, and with it, the truth that no kingdom could ignore. Sauron had returned. Aragorn stood at the edge of the council, cloaked in quiet dignity. He said little as the others debated, argued, and fell into old rivalries. But when Boromir of Gondor questioned his authority, questioned his bloodline, Aragorn stepped forward, not with pride, but with purpose. "I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and if by life or death I can protect you, I will." The words were not loud, but they landed like steel. The broken sword of Elendil, Narsil, had been reforged. Its name now was Andúril, Flame of the West. It gleamed with the fire of a legacy reborn. Elrond confirmed what few in the council suspected. This ranger in travel-worn boots was no ordinary man. He was Isildur's heir, the rightful king of Gondor and Anor. And though Aragorn flinched at the weight of that title, he did not refuse it. When the time came to choose who would carry the ring toward Mount Doom, it was clear Frodo would go, but he would not go alone. Elves, dwarves, men and hobbits would stand beside him. The Fellowship of the Ring was born. Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, Gandalf, and Aragorn. It was not a band of heroes, it was a fragile alliance, full of old grudges, clashing ideals and unspoken fears. But Aragorn knew that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged not in kinship, but in shared purpose. He walked beside Legolas, an elf, Gimli, a dwarf, and Boromir, a man of Gondor who still doubted him. And yet he accepted them all. He looked after Frodo like a guardian, gave Sam quiet nods of reassurance, and watched Gandalf not as a follower, but as an equal in burden. As they left Rivendell and crossed into the wild, Aragorn did not wear a crown, but among those 9, he walked like a king. Not by bloodline alone, but by choice. Snow choked the mountain passes, and wolves howled in the night. Caradhras had turned them back with a fury that felt unnatural. The Fellowship had only one path left: Moria, the long-abandoned kingdom beneath the misty mountains. Aragorn hesitated. He knew the name well. Khazad-dûm, once the pride of the dwarves, was now whispered, Asatum. Orcs had swarmed it, and darker things were said to dwell in its depths. He looked to Gandalf, his old friend, and trusted his judgment, though his heart was heavy. As the great doors creaked open, darkness swallowed them whole. Inside, the air was still and stale, thick with the weight of death. The Fellowship moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing off cold stone. Gimli walked with pride, eager to see his kinsfolks. But when they found Balin's tomb, silent and desecrated, even Gimli wept. And then came the drums. "They are coming," Aragorn whispered, his hand tightening on Andúril. The orcs struck like a wave in the darkness, hundreds of them swarming the Fellowship in the tomb chamber. Aragorn fought with cold precision, blade flashing in the dark. He defended Frodo with everything he had, striking down foe after foe, shoulder to shoulder with Boromir. But then, something deeper stirred, a sound like thunder, a shadow with fire for limbs, the Balrog of Morgoth.